In this next chapter, we're going to continue talking about implementing hooks inside of our theme. This time around, we're going to take a look at hook page alter. We can take a look at the documentation for the hook page alter function on api.drupal.org first. Hook page alter comes into play when we start talking about renderables. If you remember earlier in this series and in the basic theming series, we talked about this concept of renderable arrays. So a big array that describes all of the content of a page. Each individual item is a renderable array. So we saw when we talked about the taxonomy terms on our page that they were each a renderable array. The link that we rendered out for each of the tags on the page was a renderable array, and so forth. In Drupal 7, the entire content of your page is actually a renderable array. Right until the last second, we're inside of html.tpl.php file, Drupal calls render on the page array. Hook page alter allows us as a theme developer to make changes to that renderable array right before Drupal calls render in order to render the entire contents of that page to HTML. Hooks like this, like hook page alter, are also available to modules, and it's how a lot of modules perform their tasks. The block module, for example, uses hook page alter in order to place blocks into regions on the page. Let's take a look at implementing hook page alter inside of our 960 robots theme. What I'd like to do is use hook page alter, and when we go to an article on our site, which has an image field down here at the bottom, I'd like to use hook page alter to take this image field out of the content of this node here and move it to the top of this column over here, right above this popular block. So anytime we're viewing a page that is a node that has an image attached to it, I want that image to be displayed up here at the top of the popular block. Inside of our template.php file, we need to create an implementation of hook page alter. So I'll just create a new function, and I'll name it 960 robots page alter, and it just takes one argument, this page array. With alter hooks like this, it's important to remember the ampersand before the array variable name here. So we make sure and say ampersand $page. Ampersand in PHP means pass by reference. And that means any changes we make to this array inside of our function will be passed back upstream to the function that called this one without us actually having to return any value from the function itself. Inside of 960 robots page alter, I'm just going to print out that page array so we can take a look at what's inside of it. So I'm going to use the kpr function provided by the devel module. I'll flip back over to our site. We do need to clear the cache again because we added a new hook implementation. So I can use the performance tab here to do that. I'll clear all caches. And then when I refresh the page, I should see the output from that kpr function. There we go. Up at the top here, I can see the page array being printed out. I can start to dig into this, and what you'll see inside of this page array here is everything that is rendered to HTML to create the page below. For example, you start by seeing here's each of the individual regions on our page that have content in them. The header region, the content region, and our two sidebars. If I open up this header region, I can see inside of that there's a block, this search form block here. I can dig into that. I can dig further and further into this page renderable array and see each of the different elements on the page that are going to be rendered into HTML and the different information that Drupal has. These properties here, again, properties are anything that starts with the pound sign. So pound type here of form is saying that this renderable element is of type form. It uses that information to determine how to turn all of this into HTML when the render function is called. So that's inside of our header. That's going to end up being this search block right here. Inside of content, and then system main, so the main block which contains all of the main content of our site. I can see here's the individual node that's being displayed. If I scroll down, that's going to relate to this actual content region right here and the node being displayed inside of that content region. For the node, I can see that that's node number 48. Inside of that, I can see each of the different fields for that node. So the body field, the tags field, the image field, the one that we're interested in here. With that image field, you can continue to drill down and see as a renderable array how that's described. This image field is going to use the theme function theme_field to display it, and the content of that image field is this element here, and so forth. You can see this page array gets pretty complicated and very, very deep. There's lots of nested structure inside of this array. So what we'd like to do is take this image field here, which is part of the node in the main content region when we're viewing a node page, and move it so that it's inside of this sidebar first region up at the top above our popular block, this block here, block_1. So in order to do that, we need to write some code inside of our template.php file that simply moves things around inside the structure of this array. Let's take a look at how we would do that. Back over in my template.php file, the first thing I'm going to want to do is make sure that I'm only making alterations to the array when I'm viewing a node page. Because this won't have any effect on other pages on the site, so if it's not a node with an image attached to it, I don't want this code to run. I'm going to write an if statement to make sure that I'm viewing the node page first. My if statement would look something like this. I'm using Drupal's built-in arg function, which allows me to inspect the different elements in the URL or the path of this page. So I'm saying if the first argument in the URL is the word node, and the second argument is numeric, then this is likely a node page. So if I look at the URL for this node 48 back in our site, you can see the first argument here is the word node, the second argument is the numeric value or the unique ID of this node, number 48. Inside of that, I can then write some code that will manipulate this page array when I'm viewing the node to move the image field into the right sidebar. And that code would look something like this. In the first line, I'm simply getting the return value from this call to the arg function. So the argument 1, that node ID, in this case, that number 48, and I'm going to assign it to the variable $NID. I need this because I know that part of the structure of this page array contains that node ID. As a refresher, we can look at that real quick and say, see here, inside of content, we had system main nodes, and then this number 48 here is the node ID. So in order to get all the way down to this field image element inside of this page array, I need to know what that node ID is. So that's what this line here does. It says get the node ID. The next line says copy the content of that field image element all the way inside of content, system main, nodes, node ID, there's that field image element, and I'm going to copy that into a variable named image. And then this last line here uses the PHP function array unshift to take this new image variable that we just created and add it to the beginning of the page sidebar first array. So what that'll do is, if we look at the output of the page array again, is make a copy of this field image element and move it so that it now becomes the first element inside of this sidebar first array. So it'll be right here above block 1. So we'll go ahead and save that code. And then if I refresh the page, you can see that our image is now appearing over here at the top of the first sidebar. It's also still going to be appearing down here at the bottom. What I need to do now is actually remove it from that portion of the page array as well. So far all I've done is made a copy of that image field and moved it to the first sidebar here. But I want to make sure and remove it from the content of the node so that it's not displayed twice on the same page. I can do that with another simple line of code inside of our template.php file. I can simply copy this line here, and I'm going to use PHP's unset function to say, go ahead and delete or unset this portion of the array. So I'm going to unset the content system main nodes node ID field image. So that'll no longer be inside of the page array, it'll no longer be rendered to HTML and printed out in the body of our node. To prove that that's working, we can switch over to our site, click refresh, and scroll down, and there we go. The image is no longer there, but it does appear at the top of our first column over here. This is just one example of something that you could do using Hook Page Alter. Some other examples that you might use: something that was previously difficult to do in Drupal, possible but difficult, was to take a block like this popular block here and have that same block appear twice on the same page in two different regions. So there might be a reason where I wanted to have that same content appear twice. I could use Hook Page Alter to make a copy of that block and place it somewhere else on the site. Another thing that you might do is if you had a list of nodes, like on our home page here. So I'll go back to the home page. It's still printing out the page array because we've still got that KPR inside of Hook Page Alter. On the home page, we've actually got a list of 10 nodes here, the teasers for each one. If I inspect this array, I can take a look here. So inside of content, system main nodes is now actually going to contain each one of those nodes that's being printed out to the page. So instead of just number 48, it's got all 10 of them that are going to be printed to the page. Something that you could maybe do with this would be to add like an add in between the first two nodes of the site. So you might have a view that displays all of these nodes on your page, and then you could have a little bit of code inside of your template.php file that says, if it's a list of nodes, I want to insert this advertisement block in between the first two nodes in the list. Again, something that you could do in Drupal 6, but was fairly complicated to do. So Hook Page Alter provides a lot of power. It gives you the option to do stuff like that. It also means, as the themer, you can do some pretty nasty stuff. I could, using that unset function, very easily remove any portion of this page array, and it would just not get printed out on the page any longer. There's some other things about the page array here that you should probably be aware of. For example, if I was to change the name of a region in my theme, like if I changed my sidebar first region and named it right sidebar instead of sidebar first, this key inside of my page array would also change. So I need to remember to update any of my Hook Page Alter implementations to change that key as well. It also means that simply by doing things in the admin interface, like moving blocks around, that I can move a block using the admin interface from sidebar first here to sidebar second. If my code in Hook Page Alter originally expected that block to be in sidebar first, say block 1 here, and then I moved it using the admin interface to sidebar second, my code's not going to work any longer because the block is no longer in this first sidebar. It's now in the second sidebar, so I'd have to make sure and update my code again to reflect that. But this just gives you an idea of some of the many things that you can do implementing Hook Page Alter inside of your theme.